Hey there! Welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1995 direct-to-video sequel, Darkman II, The Return of Durant. Now, Darkman II is actually the first ever direct-to-video movie from Universal. MCA Universal Home Video was a pretty well-known brand even before this point, which makes it kind of surprising that MCA Universal did not do a direct-to-video movie until Darkman II. But because Darkman II was the first ever direct-to-video movie for the studio, they gave it a lot of advertisement. They gave it a lot of advertising power. They ran the gamut of promotion for this movie. And it got a decent budget for a direct-to-video film, as well as the third film, which is why both of these movies, when it comes to direct-to-video standards, are a little bit above the norm. Still, it's a lower budget, a much lower budget than the first Darkman, but they weren't dealing with pocket change. Now, speaking of promotion, they actually did release a Darkman 2 behind-the-scenes tape for retailers and for rental stores to entice them to buy copies of Darkman 2 and to purchase bundles and so on and so forth to promote in their stores. And I actually have a copy of one of these tapes, Darkman II, The Return of Durant, behind the scenes. Now, this has a really short behind the scenes featurette on the making of the movie. Making of the movie really should be in air quotes because they don't really go that in depth when it comes to the making of the film. A good chunk of this featurette is just describing the plot of the movie, which is honestly pretty disappointing. But there's some extra stuff that was interesting, seeing some interviews with Vosloo, the director Bradford May, and the best part of it was when you got to see an interview with one of the effects artists from K&B talking about what they did differently with the Darkman makeup for this sequel. And this is a interesting little oddity and a nice collector's item because this is the only way to watch that featurette, because for some reason Scream Factory never even bothered to try to get it onto this Blu-ray. They have the trailer, they have the TV cut of this film, and they have a VHS promo, which is what I thought would be this behind-the-scenes featurette, but that's not the case. It's just the same promo to entice retailers to buy bundles and to buy copies of Darkman 2 to rent out to customers at their establishments. So, missed opportunity, but still a good addition to the collection since I am a fan of Darkman. And what K&B did differently is they created a new format, a new form for the makeup effects. So instead of it being this labor-intensive, like 6 to 8 hour makeup job, or even more than that, they found a way to revolutionize things and to streamline things so that the makeup pieces, the latex pieces, could be applied via Velcro. So I thought that was really ingenious, and I thought that was something that I didn't know about until I saw that little featurette on that screener tape. Now, the film itself, Darkman 2, The Return of Durant, is really not that great of a movie. It's one of those films that I never really thought was that good, even when I saw it for the first time years ago. It's a movie that I can watch for certain parts of the production, namely Larry Drake, but he alone is, and some of the other things about it that I didn't mind, are not enough to make this film good, let alone even mediocre time waster entertainment. I keep trying to trick myself into thinking that this is a time waster for me, but then there's so many different elements and so many different parts of this film when it comes to a story, when it comes to the characterization and the approach that it has with certain characters, that it just isn't really on that level for me. And it is absolutely multiple steps down in terms of overall quality from the first film. And that's somewhat to be expected considering it's a direct-to-video movie, but not necessarily as far down as this film tends to fall. I mean, Darkman 3 is not on the same level as the first film, but Darkman 3 is actually a pretty decent movie. This, on the other hand, it's your typical below average film. It's got things that work, but there are so many different other things about it that are just terrible. So Darkman II, Return of Durant, it's directed by Bradford May. And Bradford May, I think he worked in some capacity on Darkman. I think he worked with some of the cinematography or some of the other aspects of the movie. So he had a little bit of experience with the Darkman universe and with what Sam Raimi and what Robert Tapert wanted for this franchise and for this world that Darkman created. It takes place years later after the events of the first movie, and I'll go more in depth on the plot when I get to the screenplay. But Bradford May's direction, it's adequate. It's all right. It's nothing spectacular. I think he does a much better job in Darkman 3. Here, it really does feel every bit of a direct-to-video movie. It lacks the same size and scope that the first film had, and that's understandable because of the lower budget, but that doesn't mean that it needs to look like a TV movie. Like, you can have a direct-to-video film, but it doesn't mean that it has to look like a TV film. There are plenty of direct-to-video movies, even from this time period, that didn't look like they were just straight-up TV movies. Like, this was a backdoor pilot for a Darkman TV show, which is interesting because prior to Darkman 2 and 3 being shot back-to-back in the latter half of 1993, there was an attempt to make a Darkman TV show, or at least make a pilot to get people interested in a show, in particular executives at Fox, but that was an absolute disaster. Like, this is a masterpiece compared to that. And I'll save my thoughts on that travesty for down the line. But anyway, this really does. It feels like a TV movie. It feels like an extended 2-part pilot for a Darkman TV show. And I think if it was that kind of... If I was judging it on that particular level, and there were more episodes, and the show got better as it went along, then I would be able to appreciate this more. But as it stands, as a standalone film and as a standalone sequel, it's honestly quite lame. Bradford May's flat direction does the film no favors most of the time. I think he got some decent performances out of his cast, namely people like Kim Delaney and Larry Drake. But I don't really think his direction had a lot to do with Larry Drake's performance. I think Larry Drake just showed up on set and just was like, hey, I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to be Durant again, and I'm going to chew the scenery to obscene levels. And that's really all that Larry Drake had planned for that day, or for the shoot. Same goes for Lawrence Dane, who plays a guy named Dr. Alfred Hathaway, who is just psycho Doc Brown. If you ever wanted to see an alternate dimension or an alternate timeline where Doc Brown from Back to the Future actually was criminally insane, this is the film for you. And this is the performance that really does bring that into the forefront. But, I mean, the direction, I mean, especially in the action sequences, and it's just very flat and dull, and doesn't really have the same life or vitality or energy as the first film. And I get it, very few directors are able to capture Raimi's manic energy on film, but there was really not that much of an attempt to do that. There wasn't really the same anger, which is very integral to the character of Darkman and to this franchise. It's very tepid. And the script by Stephen McKay, I mean, it could have been worse, but it also could have been a hell of a lot better. For one, the way that it handles the character of Darkman is a massive misfire. For some reason, this screenplay that takes place years after the events of the first movie throws away the intriguing, interesting dynamic of Darkman being a man who is losing a battle with the darker side of him, and dealing with more and more bouts of insanity and unbridled rage. In this film, Darkman is as cool as the other side of the pillow. Like, he's calm, he's cool, he's got it all together. Every now and then he'll have a moment of rage, but that doesn't really have that much of an impact because it seems like he gets over it rather quickly. He's too chill. He's too chill in this. And it makes the character of Darkman into a generic, forgettable, run-of-the-mill superhero. Because you just took away not only the humanity of this character, but you took away the vulnerability and the most interesting aspects of the character and just made him into a completely boring, normal, everyday hero. I mean, there are too many scenes where Peyton has his mask on and is just acting like nothing is wrong, everything is fine. And on one hand, I think that might be due to the fact that Arnold Vosloo was not a good enough actor at the time to really handle the more intense aspects of the character. So they kind of had to essentially dumb down Darkman to enable Vasulu to be able to kind of halfway make it work. But even if that's the case, they didn't even give him a chance to even try to provide the same emotional depth or pathos to the character. And if that isn't bad enough, you bring back Durant. And yes, I mean, why? Like, how the hell did he survive that helicopter crash? I know it's a comic book universe, but this is a stretch even for a comic book universe. Like, he wakes up out of a coma, and he's only got like a couple scars on his face. Like, he blew up in a helicopter crash in a ball of fucking fire. He should be burned to shit, like Darkman. And that would be an interesting thing, to see a scarred, fucked up looking Durant going up against Darkman, and he's even more unhinged and crazy now because Darkman took away his face and took away his life. But they don't even go that route. You could have had Larry Drake playing Two-Face. That would have been a blast, seeing Larry Drake's version of Two-Face, but they didn't go that route. They went the safe route, which is honestly what most of this film does, other than the moments where it does have some grit or it has some surprising amount of blood or gore. Like, there's a sequence where a guy gets his head cut off by a what is, I'm trying to think of it. It's not a dump truck. by a bulldozer. He gets his head cut off by a bulldozer. There's another scene where a guy gets pumped full of lead and there's blood squibs that fly everywhere. So there are moments in this film where there are bits of gore or blood or some kind of intensity, but they're very few and far between. Most of the time it feels like it's a cartoon version of Darkman. Like, if you animated certain sequences from this film, they could have easily just been aired on Saturday morning on the Fox box, with Batman the Animated Series. Stay tuned after Batman the Animated Series for the series premiere of Darkman, the Animated Series. Say what you want about the first film, it had its moments of camp, and you could say that some parts of it were cartoonish, but none of them were even on the same level of cartoonish as this film. So Durant, for some reason, somehow, some way, is still alive. Okay, I can let that slide because you get to see more of Larry Drake. And he really is quite wonderful in this film. Just like he was in the first film. But here, he gets even more screen time. In a lot of ways, he's actually the star of this movie. But the screenplay lets him down by having incredibly forgettable dud henchmen for Durant. And you have a subplot with this reporter who is played by Kim Delaney, this reporter, Jill Randall, who is doing this kind of hard copy, not necessarily parody, but definitely a take on hard copy. And this character and this whole subplot is completely pointless because the screenwriters decide, for no fucking reason, to literally blow this whole subplot up. Why? What was even the point of this whole thing? Because Kim Delaney's character, she actually, throughout the course of the film, is one of the strongest characters in the movie. She has some genuine chemistry with Arnold Vosloo's Peyton Westlake, and one of the few people that actually does have chemistry with him. And then as soon as they build that chemistry, her character gets blown up in a car bomb. Why? I have no fucking idea. Maybe Kim Delaney wasn't able to shoot anymore. If it was due to shooting conflicts, that's just a lazy way to do it. But I honestly don't buy it. Like, what was Kim Delaney really doing in 1993 that she could not do more scenes for Darkman 2? I mean, really? I mean, she was on the cast of NYPD Blue in 1995. Before that, she had a role in an episode of Tales from the Crypt in 1990. She was in a few films. She was in Body Parts, and she was in something called Lady Boss, which is a TV movie. She was in The Fifth Corner, which is a TV movie, all in 1992. She was in a film called The Disappearance of Christina. Was that why she couldn't do more scenes for Darkman 2? Because she was too busy being the co-star in a movie that nobody fucking remembers, featuring John Stamos. But I don't know what the story is. But regardless, it's just a shitty way to handle this subplot. It just makes pretty much half of this movie completely worthless and feels like it was a total waste of time. And to make that even more painful, as soon as she is written out of the movie, she's replaced by this character, Brinkman, who dies at one point in the movie. She's replaced by his sister, and this character is nowhere near as strong and nowhere near as interesting. And you're like, why couldn't Kim Delaney's character, the reporter, been the damsel in distress that Darkman had to save at the end? Why does it have to be Brinkman's sister? And speaking of Brinkman, Brinkman is just Peyton Westlake 2.0. He's a brilliant scientist who's working on a synthetic skin to revolutionize burn treatments. It's literally the same character. Then he gets tortured and killed by Durant and his men. Same fucking arc as Darkman. But this time around, he doesn't live. He's dead for good. And now you just have the same plot as the first movie. Darkman wants revenge on Durant for the exact same reason, but instead of it being something, you know, that happened to him, it's something that happened to this guy that he admired and was becoming acquaintances with. And now he wants revenge on Durant because this guy that he just met, who is also a brilliant scientist, was killed by Durant and his men. And then even the car bomb thing is essentially copied and pasted in the film's climax. Durant dies in a car bomb. So it's like, you already had a car bomb with the death of Kim Delaney's character, and then you end the movie with a car bomb? I don't care if it's a bigger explosion in a limo instead of a normal, regular, everyday car. It's still a fucking car bomb. This script, it sucks. It really does. It's the same plot as the first movie. Even some of the deaths are the same. Like, even the decapitation scene I was talking about earlier is just the same setup as Ted Raimi's death in Darkman, but this time around, it actually has more of a payoff. Then there's a sequence at one point when Durant throws a guy off a building, but this time around, instead of throwing him out a window to his death, he throws a guy and a golf cart off the edge of a building to his death. It's still the same setup, and it's still the end result. So Darkman is he has the same villain in Durant. It's all about revenge once again, and he blows him up again. Like, what? They couldn't even do anything different with that. Like, if you're going to bring back Durant, why don't you blow him up a different way? Why do you have to just blow him up again in another explosion? And since he survived the last one, why the hell would you think that would work this time around? Why would you think this time it's forever? Really? Is it really going to be forever? Because you blew him up in a fucking helicopter in the movie before this, and it wasn't forever then. Man. But there are some things about the script that I didn't mind. I really like Darkman's lair, which is an underground lair in the subway. I thought that was really cool. Darkman even has his own Darkman mobile, which is honestly essentially just a ripoff of Blankman's Blankmobile. I like it, but I gotta be honest, it's just the Blankmobile. I think they might have just reused the same fucking prop too. Even the whole lair is just Blankman's lair. The more I think about it, it's not even that. That's not original either, because it's just Blankman's lair and the Blankmobile that is copied and pasted into Darkman 2. So even that cool part of the movie is just the same shit that you've seen in another movie. That was also, I don't know, Sony released that, not Universal. But in terms of anything else, because that was one of the things I liked about it. But now that I think about it, it's just Blankman's Blankmobile and his lair. But Larry Drake, he's great. He's got some really nice lines of dialogue that really make you chuckle. One in particular I love, where he's brought back from the dead and he's talking to this henchman, Rollo, and he says, "You wouldn't know a plan if it was pounded up your ass with a jackhammer." Which is great. So, there's a lot of moments like that where Larry Drake really shines. And as much as the crazy scientist guy is just psycho Doc Brown. I do enjoy the actor's portrayal. At least he's having fun with the role. And the sequences that feature him, Lawrence Dane, and Larry Drake on the same screen are loads of fun. Like straight up 60s Batman TV show entertainment. But yeah, too much of the screenplay is literally the same beats and the same things and the same paths from the previous film, but done nowhere near as effectively and nowhere near as well. And one of the things that's definitely not as good as the first film is Arnold Vosloo's performance as Peyton Westlake and Darkman. Vosloo looks the part. When he's got the hat on and the bandages and the trench coat, he looks the part. Looks good on a publicity still. Looks good in the action sequences. He's got a good presence to him. But acting-wise, he's pretty bad here. He's definitely 100% uneven. He doesn't have the same range as Liam Neeson, and it is glaringly obvious in numerous scenes. There's a moment in the film where it's supposed to be an epic scene of emotion, and it just comes across as really cringy acting. They took my life! They took everything from me! And if someone's going to stop Durant, then that someone is going to be me! Like, he even does a cape flip. He does a fucking cape flip at the end of that. That someone is going to be me! Cape flip. Just like, fucking movie, man. Come on. Vasulu is fine when he's playing a henchman and a hard target. When he's playing, the mummy in The Mummy, where he doesn't have that many lines of dialogue. But when he has to play a character where he needs to have some sort of emotional depth, he's way out of his range. And Darkman II is a prime example of this. And on the topic of things that are way out of left field or just way out of range, what the hell is up with this movie and like cutesy, cheap Halloween knockoff remote control garbage? When did Darkman develop an affection or an infatuation with this kind of shit? There's a scene in the movie where Darkman's just using a remote control and scaring his cat with some shitty looking fake rat, and you're like, what is this? Why is he doing this? And then it ties into the climax when Darkman blows up Durant for real, forever, and that hurts that scene because Durant, the last time we see Durant on screen, he's freaking out and looks in the glove compartment of his limo and sees a fucking cheesy ass looking furry fake rat that also is a bomb. And then that's what kills him. And you're just like, lame. That's honestly one of the best ways to describe Darkman 2. Lame. Despite Larry Drake's best efforts. Or Kim Delaney's efforts. She was good. I thought she did a good job with her role. I liked her character. But she was given a incredibly raw deal. Renee O'Connor as Laurie Brinkman. I thought she was awful. I really did not buy her character or this performance one iota. You have Jesse Collins, who plays David Brinkman. He just came across as a sitcom dad. Your typical sitcom dad kind of acting. And then anyone else in this movie was just completely forgettable other than Lawrence Dane. David Ferry is Eddie. Rod Wilson is Ivan Druganov. This clear white guy trying to dress like some Middle Eastern or not Middle Eastern, I mean Eastern European heavy, complete with a goatee and the accent, but it's faker than all hell. Rollo Latham, played by Jack Langedick. You know, all of these henchmen in this, they sucked dick. They did nothing to help Durant. They were all a bunch of fucking losers, and I get it, in the first film, they weren't really that great either, but they had some moments. Skip, you know, Smiley, and they at least had charisma. The henchmen in Darkman that Durant had at his disposal, they at least had charisma. None of these henchmen have charisma. They're just boring, everyday, stock henchmen characters. Literal cannon fodder. And speaking of cannons, this film, okay, the one alright interesting concept, okay. It's about these weapons that Psycho Doc Brown builds that are like laser guns, but they're not really laser guns. I guess they like fire a blast that causes things to implode, and that was a cool idea. And there's some nice political satire with these guns in terms of selling them to this far right militant. I think the governor or mayor or sheriff of some city, and so there were some nice little bits of political satire that were at work with these guns. But the guns, like, you know, Durant fires a few shots at Darkman, but he escapes. Like, you would think with that gun that Darkman would get it and blow Durant into a million bloody smithereens by the end of the movie, but they don't give you that. They just blow him up again for the second time. But, and the few action sequences that are here, some of them actually aren't too bad. Like when Darkman uses a manhole and knocks this guy out, and there's some decent shots of Darkman flying around or hiding in the shadows or in the rain. And there are some moments where Arnold Vosloo isn't awful, but he still doesn't leave really that much of an impression. Definitely not in the same way that Liam did in the first film. The score, it's a decent facsimile or copy of Danny Elfman's music in Darkman. The editing, it's fine. It's not really that problematic. But the film itself, it's just lame with a capital L for most of the movie. From the action sequences, from the acting, from anyone not named Larry Drake or Lawrence Dane or Kim Delaney. The plot is just really standard and way too much of the same from the when it comes to the plot from the first movie. And yeah, I mean, I can watch it for Larry Drake, but that's not saying a lot, and that doesn't mean that the film is really, honestly, that good. For me personally, Darkman 2 is a disappointing sequel, and it is 100% below average. If you feel otherwise, that's cool. I have no problem with that, but I've always been disappointed by this movie, and the more times I watch it, it doesn't get any better. They don't even do really anything new or cool with the masks. There's even sequences where you don't even really get to see a whole lot of the selling factor of having two of the same people on the screen at the same time. They do a lot of stuff where they cut away. Maybe it's due to budget or whatever. But Darkman 3 has a scene like that, so I don't know why they couldn't do more of that in this movie. And in the climax, despite having Larry Drake back as Durant, it's lackluster. It really is. It's a lackluster, lame sequel. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Darkman 2, The Return of Durant. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.